Hey Exiles, PoE Academy here, bringing you short but high quality PoE tutorials. Today I want to share another build from the community with you. I used it myself for the league start in 3.10 Delirium League, and what can I say, I finally found a long sought after melee starter. This build hits the perfect balance between mapping and bossing, as it combines Cyclone for fast-paced mapping and the extremely powerful Slayer Ascendancy nodes for strong bossing. Major advantages of this build are that it can be started without any unique items, its endgame can be very powerful if you invest in some gear, and the Cyclone playstyle feels very satisfying. Some disadvantages of this build are that stat requirements can be a bit annoying, especially at league start. Some endgame item choices are expensive, and choices for passives can be very overwhelming because of all the new cluster jewels. This is how I would rate this build. It obviously shines at mapping. With Cyclone you not only deal a lot of damage, but can dodge many abilities too, which is something only a few skills in the game offer. This fact also helps with a lot of bosses. The Bane of Legend Ascendancy calls bosses at 20% life, which is nice early but even better in Awakener 8 endgame. For this category I only rated it a 4 because some gear investment is required to unlock its full potential. The survivability is decent when you compare it to other melee characters. Most enemies die before they even touch us, but some high density mob packs can be dangerous. If you want to start a league with a melee character, go for this build. You can easily reach red tier maps in day 2 of the league. Flat scaling of Cyclone and instant benefits from the Slayer Ascendancy make this build extremely budget friendly. If you want to play solo self-found, this build serves your needs too. Scaling is extremely nice and you will notice every single upgrade, especially on your weapons. I only gave it a 4 in this category because for the highest endgame you still need to invest some exalts, but the options are there. This Cyclone build deals 100% physical damage, which lets us exploit a very strong mechanic, Impale. If you want to learn how this mechanic works, check out MBXtream's video on Impale, which I've linked in the description down below. If you don't mind about what the mechanic does, simply keep in mind that with 100% chance to impale on hit, your physical damage is doubled. With less chance to impale on hit, the damage boost is reduced and more importantly, less consistent, which is why you want to pick up all impale related nodes at the same time. The passive tree offers a lot of nodes for this build. In the duelist area we choose life and generic damage. The area between Marauder and Duelist provides significantly more life, all the Impale nodes we need, and a lot of damage for one-handed swords. The area between Ranger and Duelist requires some travel points but yields some life and damage. The sword wheel and life at the Ranger area finishes off the build. Keep in mind that this is the regular version of the build, which is better for league start. We start off with Impact as our first Ascendancy node to compensate accuracy issues while leveling and to boost damage. Then I'd pick up Headsman for a lot of damage. It is a very strong node for league start because we are now immune to reflected physical damage. As the third node, I'd choose Bane of Legends and finally Overwhelm. We don't pick up the Leech nodes because we don't really need them. You can choose any Pantheons you like. I'd recommend to buff our defense with Soul of Solaris and Soul of Grufko. Regarding Bandits, we kill Elira for crit multi and resists like most other builds do nowadays. There are no required items for this build, but there are 2 very cheap unique items that help it a lot. The first one is Belt of the Deceiver. This belt perfectly fits all our needs because it gives decent amount of life, buffs resistances, reduces damage from critical strikes and intimidates nearby enemies, a 15% more damage multiplier for our physical damage. The second item is a Scaver Gladius, which you should use in your main hand for the additional critical strike chance. Here's a small tip: if you set up a life surge for Scaver with 290 DPS or more, you can easily snipe an almost perfect one for 1C. The only unique flask I'd recommend is a Lion's Raw, which is used in most melee builds anyways. For the remaining flasks, you might want to choose a Basalt Flask, a Quicksilver Flask, and an Eternal Life Flask. If you run into mana issues, use a Mana Flask, and if not, choose whatever flask you feel like. As I've said earlier, this build requires some additional attributes. We need 12 dexterity and 48 intelligence somewhere on our gear, which is not a big issue if you use a citrine amulet and have some intelligence on your rings. There are a lot of stats that this build benefits from. Your first goal should be to obtain a rare jeweled foil with 250 physical DPS or more. As enchants, either 40% increased damage for Cyclone or 15% increased attack speed with Cyclone are decent choices. You should craft your helmet with jagged fossils to obtain the nearby enemies take 9% increased physical damage mod. Flat physical damage, critical strike multiplier and critical strike chance are nice stats to have on your rings and amulet. If you can, get a ring with vulnerability on hit. Make sure to have 30% or better 35% movement speed on your boots to make Cyclone even better. Defensively, fill your resistances and look for high life rolls. There are many more interesting stat choices for this build, but that goes beyond the scope of this video. If you want to learn more about the very high-end version of this build, check out the additional POB in the description. On your jewels, look for life, crit multiplier, physical damage and attack speed. Make sure to use one Abyss jewel with the gain onslaught for 4 seconds on kill mod, as this makes Cyclone feel even better. The roll should be 6% or higher to proc consistently. There's only one medium cluster jewel that is so broken that you must use it for sure. It's a medium cluster jewel with the Hexbreaker and Precise Focus mods. Hexbreaker is like a Adziri's Mirror and makes us immune to curses while we use Cyclone. I don't know why GGG introduced this to the game, but the mod is so strong you simply have to use it. Precise Focus is almost as good as Fatal Blade, so this is going to be our second choice. Our main damage setup consists of Cyclone, Close Combat, Fortify, Infused Channeling in that order. Once you've picked up Impale nodes on the tree, choose Impale as your 5th link. Brutality is a good last choice. As auras we use Pride, Flesh and Stone, Dread Banner and Precision. Once the first 3 auras are linked to Enlighten level 3, we add in Blood and Sand too. All auras have significant influence on our damage and should be picked up as soon as possible. Leap Slam feels very good with this much attack speed. We link it to Endurance Charge on melee stun to generate endurance charges when we Leap Slam into new packs. The Ancestral Warchief Totem gives us a little more damage on bosses, and a cast when damage taken setup with Molten Shell and Immortal Call are a good way to save our life in dangerous situations. This build can be leveled with any gear, but you can use some generic leveling gear like Goldrum Helmet and Wanderlust Boots to improve your leveling experience. Your leveling tree looks a little bit different from the final tree because effective melee leveling requires a lot of damage from the tree, and you want to use axes throughout the whole leveling process until you find decent swords and block aqueducts or later. Use the vendor recipe for physical damage on white axes to keep your weapons up to date. Bladestorm is a very strong skill to level melee characters, which is why we want to use it over Cyclone until we reach Blood Aqueducts. It scales very similar to Cyclone, so you can use the same support gems once you swap to Cyclone. Just make sure to level the Cyclone gem you receive in Act 3 in your items or weapon swap, because it has flat damage that scales with levels. I've been looking for a very strong melee league starter for a very long time, and I'm glad that Dex shared his approach to Cyclone. I really like that it feels good to level with, but has a very strong endgame too. What do you think about this build? Please let me know in the comments. Thanks for staying with me until the end, and see you in the next one.